Washington, IWNTEN, is a state in the Pacific Northwest region of the United States, located north of Oregon, west of Idaho, and south of the Canadian province of British Columbia on the coast of the Pacific Ocean. Named after George Washington, the first President of the United States, the state was made out of the western part of the Washington Territory, which had been ceded by Britain in 1846 by the Oregon Treaty as a settlement of the Oregon boundary dispute. It was admitted to the Union as the 42nd state in 1889. Washington is often referred to as Washington State or the State of Washington to distinguish it from Washington, D.C., the capital of the United States. Washington is the 18th largest and the 13th most populous state. Approximately 60% of Washington's residents live in the Seattle metropolitan area, the center of transportation, business, and industry along the Puget Sound region of the Salish Sea, an inlet of the Pacific consisting of numerous islands, deep fjords, and bays carved out by glaciers. The remainder of the state consists of deep, temperate rainforests in the west, mountain ranges in the west, central, northeast and far southeast, and a semi-arid basin region in the east, central, and south, given over to intensive agriculture. After California, Washington is the second most populous state on the West Coast and in the western United States. Washington is a leading lumber producer. Its rugged surface is rich in stands of Douglas fir, hemlock, ponderosa and white pine, spruce, larch, and cedar. The state is the biggest producer of apples, hops, pears, red raspberries, spearmint oil, and sweet cherries, and ranks high in the production of apricots, asparagus, dry edible peas, grapes, lentils, peppermint oil, and potatoes. Livestock and livestock products make important contributions to total farm revenue, and the commercial fishing of salmon, halibut, and bottom fish makes a significant contribution to the state's economy. Manufacturing industries in Washington include aircraft and missiles, shipbuilding and other transportation equipment, lumber, food processing, metals and metal products, chemicals, and machinery. Washington has over 1,000 dams, including the Grand Coulee Dam, built for a variety of purposes including irrigation, power, flood control, and water storage. Etymology. The Washington Territory was named after George Washington, the first President of the United States. The area was originally part of a region called the Columbia District after the Columbia River. Ironically, the area was renamed Washington in order to avoid confusion with the District of Columbia, which contains the city of Washington. Washington is the only U.S. state named after a president. To distinguish it from the U.S. capital, which is also named for George Washington, Washington is often referred to as Washington State, or in more formal contexts is the State of Washington. Washingtonians and other residents of the Pacific Northwest normally refer to the state simply as Washington, while instead referring to the nation's capital as Washington, D.C., or simply D.C. Geography. Washington is the northwesternmost state of the contiguous United States. Its northern border lies mostly along the 49th parallel, and then via marine boundaries through the Strait of Georgia, Haro Strait and Strait of Juan de Fuca, with the Canadian province of British Columbia to the north. Washington is bordered by Oregon to the south, with the Columbia River forming the western part and the 46th parallel forming the eastern part of the southern boundary. To the east, Washington borders Idaho, bounded mostly by the meridian running north from the confluence of the Snake River and Clearwater River, except for the southernmost section where the border follows the Snake River. To the west of Washington lies the Pacific Ocean. Washington was a Union territory during the American Civil War, although it never actually participated in the war. Washington is a part of a region known as the Pacific Northwest, a term which always includes Washington and Oregon and may or may not include Idaho, western Montana, northern California, and Alaska, depending on the user's intent. The high mountains of the Cascade Range run north-south bisecting the state. From the Cascades westward, western Washington has a mostly marine west coast climate, with mild temperatures and wet winters, autumns and springs, and relatively dry summers. The Cascade Range contains several volcanoes, which reach altitudes significantly higher than the rest of the mountains. From the north to the south, these volcanoes are Mount Baker, Glacier Peak, Mount Rainier, Mount St. Helens, and Mount Adams. Mount St. Helens is currently the only Washington volcano that is actively erupting. However, all of them are considered active volcanoes. Mount Rainier, the tallest mountain in the state, is 50 miles south of the city of Seattle, from which it is prominently visible. The 14,411-foot-tall Mount Rainier is considered the most dangerous volcano in the Cascade Range, due to its proximity to the Seattle metropolitan area, and most dangerous in the continental U.S., according to the Decade Volcanoes list. It is also covered with more glacial ice than any other peak in the contiguous 48 states. Western Washington also is home of the Olympic Mountains, far west on the Olympic Peninsula, which supports dense forests of conifers and areas of temperate rainforest. These deep forests, such as the Hoh rainforest, are among the only temperate rainforests in the continental United States. In contrast, eastern Washington, east of the Cascades, has a relatively dry climate with large areas of semi-arid steppe and a few truly arid deserts lying in the rain shadow of the Cascades. The Hanford Reservation receives an average annual precipitation of 6 to 7 inches. Farther east, the climate becomes less arid, increasing as one goes east to 21.2 inches in Pullman. The Okanagan Highlands and the rugged Kettle River Range and Selkirk Mountains cover much of the northeastern quadrant of the state. The Palouse southeast region of Washington was grassland that has been mostly converted into farmland, and extends to the Blue Mountains. Climate: Washington's climate varies greatly from west to east. An oceanic climate predominates in western Washington, and a much drier semi-arid climate prevails east of the Cascade Range. Major factors determining Washington's climate include the large semi-permanent high-pressure and low-pressure systems of the North Pacific Ocean, the continental air masses of North America, and the Olympic and Cascade Mountains. In the spring and summer, a high-pressure anticyclone system dominates the North Pacific Ocean, causing air to spiral out in a clockwise fashion. For Washington, this means prevailing winds from the northwest bring relatively cool air and a predictably dry season. In the autumn and winter, a low-pressure cyclone system takes over in the North Pacific Ocean, with air spiraling inward in a counterclockwise fashion. This causes Washington's prevailing winds to come from the southwest, bringing relatively warm and moist air masses and a predictably wet season. The term "Pineapple Express" is used colloquially to describe the extreme form of this wet season pattern. Despite western Washington's having a marine climate similar to those of many coastal cities of Europe, there are exceptions such as the Big Snow events of 1880, 1881, 1893 and 1916, and the Deep Freeze winters of 1883 to 84, 1915-16, 1949-50 and 1955-56, among others. During these events, western Washington experienced up to 6 feet of snow, sub-zero temperatures, 3 months with snow on the ground, and lakes and rivers frozen over for weeks. Seattle's lowest officially recorded temperature is 0 degrees Fahrenheit, set on January 31, 1950. But low-altitude areas approximately 3 hours away from Seattle have recorded lows as cold as -48 degrees Fahrenheit. Weather during the cold season is greatly influenced by the Southern Oscillation. During the El Niño phase, the jet stream enters the U.S. farther south through California, therefore late fall and winter are drier than normal with less snowpack. The La Nina phase reinforces the jet stream through the Pacific Northwest, causing Washington to have even more rain and snow than average. In 2006, the Climate Impacts Group at the University of Washington published The Impacts of Climate Change in Washington's Economy, a preliminary assessment on the risks and opportunities presented given the possibility of a rise in global temperatures and their effects on Washington state. Rain shadow effects. Rainfall in Washington varies dramatically going from east to west. The western side of the Olympic Peninsula receives as much as 160 inches of precipitation annually, making it the wettest area of the 48 conterminous states and a temperate rainforest. Weeks or even months may pass without a clear day. The western slopes of the Cascade Range receive some of the heaviest annual snowfall in the country. In the rain shadow area east of the Cascades, the annual precipitation is only 6 inches. Precipitation then increases again eastward toward the Rocky Mountains. The Olympic Mountains and Cascades compound this climatic pattern by causing orographic lift of the air masses blown inland from the Pacific Ocean, resulting in the windward side of the mountains receiving high levels of precipitation and the leeward side receiving low levels. This occurs most dramatically around the Olympic Mountains and the Cascade Range. In both cases, the windward slopes facing southwest receive high precipitation and mild, cool temperatures, while the Puget Sound lowlands are known for clouds and rain in the winter. The western slopes of the Cascades receive larger amounts of precipitation, often falling as snow at higher elevations. East of the Cascades, a large region experiences strong rain shadow effects. Semi-arid conditions occur in much of eastern Washington, with the strongest rain shadow effects at the relatively low elevations of the central Columbia Plateau, especially the region just east of the Columbia River from about the Snake River to the Okanagan Highland. Thus, instead of rainforests, much of eastern Washington is covered with grassland and shrub steppe. Temperatures. The average annual temperature ranges from 51 degrees Fahrenheit on the Pacific coast to 40 degrees Fahrenheit in the northeast. The lowest temperature recorded in the state was -48 degrees Fahrenheit in Winthrop and Mazama. The highest recorded temperature in the state was 118 degrees Fahrenheit at Ice Harbor Dam. Both records were set east of the Cascades. Western Washington is known for its mild climate, considerable fog, frequent cloud cover, and long-lasting drizzles in the winter, and warm, temperate summers. The eastern region occasionally experiences extreme climate. Arctic cold fronts in the winter and heat waves in the summer are not uncommon. In the western region, temperatures have reached as high as 112 degrees Fahrenheit in Marietta, and as low as -20 degrees Fahrenheit in Longview. Flora and fauna. Forests cover 52% of the state's land area, mostly west of the North Cascades. Approximately two-thirds of Washington's forested area is publicly owned, including 64% of federal land. Other common trees and plants in the region are Camassia, Douglas fir, hemlock, penstemon, ponderosa pine, western red cedar, and many species of ferns. The state's various areas of wilderness offer sanctuary, with substantially large populations of shorebirds and marine mammals. The Pacific shore surrounding the San Juan Islands are heavily inhabited with killer gray and humpback whales. Mammals native to the state include the bat, black bear, bobcat, cougar, coyote, deer, elk, gray wolf, moose, mountain beaver, muskrat, opossum, pocket gopher, raccoon, river otter, skunk, and tree squirrel. Because of the wide range of geography, the state of Washington is home to several different ecoregions which allow for a varied range of bird species. This range includes raptors, shorebirds, woodland birds, grassland birds, ducks, and others. There have also been a large number of species introduced to Washington, dating back to the early 1700s, including horses and burros. The channel catfish, lamprey, and sturgeon are among the 400 known freshwater fishes. Along with the Cascades frog, there are several forms of snakes that define the most prominent reptiles and amphibians. Coastal bays and islands are often inhabited by plentiful amounts of shellfish and whales. There are 5 species of salmon that ascend the western Washington area, from streams to spawn. Washington has a variety of National Park Service units. Among these are the Alta Lake State Park, San Juan Islands National Wildlife Refuge, as well as 3 national parks: the Olympic National Park, North Cascades National Park and Mount Rainier National Park. The 3 national parks were established between 1899 and 1968. Almost 95% of Olympic National Park's area has been designated as wilderness under the National Wilderness Preservation System. Additionally, there are 143 state parks and 9 national forests, run by the Washington State Park System and the United States Forest Service. The Okanagan National Forest is the largest national forest located on the West Coast, encompassing 1,499,023 acres. It is managed together as the Okanagan-Wenatchee National Forest, encompassing a considerably larger area of around 3,239,404 acres.